little bit of Abu Zubaydah's background in conjunction with that first Blacksite, just so that for the people that haven't read the book yet, and I say yet because you're going to go buy it and fucking read it, is if you can just kind of quickly synopsize what that environment was like in conjunction with what he was bringing to the table from a high level standpoint.
Well, first let me tell you who he is. There was some confusion at the time about who he was, mostly because he was misrepresenting himself to the press. He was saying that he was the third in Al-Qaeda. He was giving interviews to people claiming that he was a high-level operative. What he really was he ran a terrorist training camp, Halden camp, and Calden, and he did all the typical kind of introductory basic terror training stuff that they did. In addition to that, he was a travel facilitator. He forged passports, he got money, he arranged weddings, and so a lot of people moved through him, right? So he was important to, from an intel perspective, because he could provide insight into both the thinking of the leadership, because he knew the leadership, also the methods they had been trained in, what sort of things they were trying to do, how they moved money, how they moved people, who was actually in charge. There was a great deal of information beyond the next attack in America that he could and did provide that was helpful. He also provided information that allowed us to stop Jose Padilla from setting off apartment-style bombs in Chicago. But he was a very important guy, mainly because he was like a logs guy, a logistics guy. He ran a training camp and he moved people around. He was also involved in the Millennium attack that got thwarted by that guy coming in. The guy was coming in through Canada, and he ran from our customs folks, and they caught him. That guy, whose name slips my mind right now, told the FBI that Zubaydah had sent him there to do that terror attack.
Was it Richard Reed, the shoe bomber?
No, that's years later. It was, I'm not going to remember it off the top of my head. But Zubaydah said, oh, no, I gave him money. I arranged his travel. I faked his passport. I said, go to America and do attacks. But I didn't order him to do that. Yeah. Well, that's a difference without a distinction in a lot of different ways. Yeah. And so I can talk about it later on if you want me to. I can talk about it now. But Zubaydah had his own plans to set up his own terror cell and become a bin Laden-like guy. Yeah. And I'll talk about that a little bit later if you want me to.
Sure. Yeah, if you could, just to shed some backdrop on what that Blacksite was kind of like, the environment, the cell, the conditions.
Okay, so I have to be a little careful and stay with what's in the book. Yeah. And because the sites are still classified and the locations are still classified. So I can't confirm or deny any speculation about where it might have been or any of that sort of stuff. It just looked like, if you've ever watched The Cell, if you've ever watched Gunsmoke, then you have a pretty good idea of what his cell looked like. It's just a room, concrete room with bars and lights and cameras. And there was a curtain. All of this is in my book, so I'm not revealing classified information. It wasn't for your listeners, it's for someone else.
No, I'm trying.
Right? There's a curtain, and then there's another open space, and then there's a door, and then the guards who were CIA police officers just outside the door, right? So because he was wounded, he needed lights 24 hours a day, and it was a very severe wound. I'm actually surprised he survived in the hospital. In fact, they flew in, and this has also been declassified, they flew in a hospitalist from Johns Hopkins to save his life, specifically to save his life, and George Tenet said, you guys will do nothing that causes that man to die. Yeah. We need the information. He is going to survive. Yeah. And so there was a great deal of focus on keeping him well and keeping him alive. Yeah. And but that's essentially what it was. We were, in the walk-in basement of a building. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I appreciate that. Again, I'd just like to offer a little bit of perspective so that the listener can, if they've not read the book, can gain some insight as to what that feels like. But one thing that this is just more for my fucking
amateur amusement or immature amusement rather. But one of the quotes in here that I pulled from the book really made me laugh in terms of before you started using the enhanced interrogation techniques. His level of fucking with you guys, basically, of just mocking you.
You talking about the FBI agents?
Well, them, yeah, especially. But there's one story in particular that just, with my background coming from the SEAL teams, really reminded me of some shit that we would do. But I'll just read it real quick because it made me laugh. And it provides, I think, a perspective that you wouldn't think would come from somebody that's that, staunch in terms of their, religious affiliation.
You have to remember that he got religion late in life.
Yeah.
He went to he had the standard upbringing, but he had a pretty wild youth.
Yeah.
And he was very familiar with Western culture. So
Yeah.
he's got several Americanisms.
But it says, or in the book it says, at one point, while they were pressing him, this is the FBI, to be more specific about past conversations with Al-Qaeda operatives seeking nuclear weapons, he leaned forward as if he was about to say something important. The FBI agents leaned in. Zubaydah then let loose a long, noisy, wet-sounding fart while looking them straight in the eye. From the looks of disgust on their faces, the FBI agents, as we watched on the closed-circuit TV, it must have smelled exceptionally foul. As the sound of the fart faded, Zubaydah said, "Now that's nuclear." So to me, it's just like you wouldn't expect shit like that goes on. But they do. They fuck around and play jokes, and that was another one of the things. There's a number of examples in the book, whether it's Khalid Sheikh Mohammed or a number of other guys. It's some of the things that they do that had you guys laughing, and some of the rapport-based stuff, which we'll get into. But I was not expecting them to make jokes and do stupid shit like that, I guess.
Well, the thing that actually gave me a leg up, Ali Soufan, who's the FBI agent who bad-mouths me every chance he gets, has never seen me do an interrogation.
Yeah.
And to my knowledge, wasn't really privy to any of the intel that came out of it because he had already left. I, on the other hand, have watched him do interrogations day after day for months, right? And his relationship with Abu Zubaydah was one in which he thought, or at least claimed, I can't speak for what he thought, I can just tell you what he told me. He told me that he, a Shia, was acting as Abu Zubaydah's spiritual guide. Well, he can't do that because she is a kafir they're worse, they're apostates.
Yeah.
They're apostates to Zubaydah. And later, Zubaydah told me I was just jerking him around because Islam's were talking about him trying to convince me to do the right thing. I'm not talking about the secrets I'm trying to keep.
Yeah.
But they did have good relationships, and there'd be a lot of what in the military we'd call smoking and joking.
Yeah.
While they're trying to press him for stuff because they're doing rapport building stuff.
Yeah.
And we did some of that too. I mean, we knew what they were doing. It was just that it wasn't going anywhere because he was using their rapport building efforts as a resistance strategy, so that he just drug it out and drug it out and drug it out. And every time he squeaked something out, like Jose Padilla, it was because we did some psychological manipulation on him,
Yeah. Yep. Well, no, and so I want to get into kind of some of the techniques, more from a psychological standpoint, that remind me a lot of dog training and just some of the interactions, whether it's getting dogs to do certain things or getting them to stop doing certain things. And I saw a lot of parallels that I'm looking forward to covering. But one of the things you talk about is the paradoxical intervention with the chairs.
Yeah.
Basically every time you're putting a chair in, he's breaking it.
Yeah, he's breaking a chair. He's the doctors require that he sit, and so we gave him the same chairs we were sitting in, right? And he broke one. And because of the reaction to him breaking one, he was reinforced. Mm-hmm. And he would break another one, and he would break another one, and he would break another one. And finally, the COB said to me, "You got to do something. We got to do something." And they wanted to punish him. And I'm like, we're not in the punishment business, I think that's a bad idea.
Yeah.
What we have to do is we have to do an intervention that where he concludes that it's futile to continue to break these chairs.
Yeah.
And so what I suggested that they do is go out into the local community and buy every identical chair they could find. And when I mean, they were as tall as your ceiling, 2 stacks of chairs the size of your ceiling. And we waited until he started breaking the other chair. And then the guards just carried those 2 stacks of chairs and set him down, so he's jumping up and down. I'm sorry. He's jumping up and down.
Yeah.
He's jumping up and down in his chair. And then the guards, they don't even talk to him. They don't even look at him. They're completely, they look like space aliens. They've got reflective goggles on. They're completely in black. Their hands are black. Everything is black, And they carry these 2 giant things of chairs, which are moving like some sort of Ed Sullivan balancing act in there. And they set him down right next to his cell so he can see him. And he looks at the chairs and he puts his head in his hand and he goes, and he never broke another chair.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, here's what's, to me, is interesting about that is that a lot of the dogs that we get in here on the Worry Dog Foundation are really shitty over toys. Like they'll fucking bite you if you come. The resource guarding is they'll get real shitty with you. And so a good way to counteract that is a similar technique in terms of just flooding them with so many fucking toys that they're just like, well, shit, it doesn't mean anything. And it's a conditioned response to, they have a funneled level of overdriven levels of prey drive, and so here's one toy to play with, and then so they're like, this is mine, motherfucker, and then they've got people choking them off of them and pulling them from them and stuff, and so it increases their guardedness of it. Because it's such a valued resource, and so you decrease the level of value by giving them 40 of them in a field where you're kicking them around and playing with them and swapping them for them, and over time they just stop giving a fuck. So it really reminded me of that, which I thought was
I had
fun.
used an intervention like that. Now I got to be careful because I'm sued by people who claim that I was training these guys like dogs. So I want to be clear that
psychology's psychology.
Well, it's behavioral psychology.
Yeah.
It's not dog training, right? So although they're obvious, I mean, it's used all over the place, and dog training is one specific application of it. But it's also used for patients, and I'll tell you an example of how that happened, just to be quick about it. I worked in a private psychiatric hospital in a locked ward, and there was a lady who always stole other people's towels. Right, and again, they were going crazy about what do we do? This was before Abu Zubaydah stuff, right? When I was getting my degree, what do we do? And I said, fill our bedroom up with towels. Yeah. And they're like, what? Yeah. And so I went into her and I said, her name was Millie. I said, Millie, there must be a reason that you're taking other people's towels. You probably need a lot of towels. So what we're going to do is we're going to store towels. And we just filled her entire bedroom up. She had to turn sideways to get to her bed, And then she started taking them out. Yeah. And then we started putting them back in, And eventually she said, please, just get these towels out of here. I can't stand any more towels. And it stopped. And that's what came to my mind with the chairs.
Yeah. Oh, it's fucking brilliant. I love it. I mean, like I said, there's just a lot of parallels between.
Well, there would be because it's behavioral science.
Yeah,
it's what I mean. It's it's the same behavioral science, whether you're applying it to cognitive behavioral therapy or you're applying it to training pigeons to fly, to deliver notes, or whether you're training dogs. It's all the same science.
Yeah, and to me, I think where the parallel is the most succinct is where it's a behavioral issue that you're trying to get rid of, because that's what we run into all the time, So
we don't care what they think. We just want them to change the behavior.
Well, and the other thing too is that what I gathered over and over is that a lot of times where people, whether they were debriefers, interrogators, COBs, COSs, whatever, people that were involved in the program at some level or another, where they ran into the biggest mistakes was where they were looking at it from their perspective and not the individual.
That is astute.
Yeah.
Because we ran into that a lot. And so what I always ask myself in a situation, even now when I'm in a situation, what must this person think, act, and feel in order to do the thing that I would like that person to do? And then I try to first arrange the environment, then arrange my own behavior towards that person, and then arrange my conversation in a way that the words I use trigger the associations in that person's mind.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why it stuck out to me very blatantly is because that's the exact same thing we do here.
Oh.
I mean, to a T, is that or when I see problems in people, it's always because you're looking at it from a human's perspective, not like a dog. They don't think the same, they don't learn the same. Like the psychology principles work the exact same, but how they're applied are very differently. And it's exactly like you said, is step one is you manipulate their environment. and then you remove all stimuli that they're going to give a shit about, and now I possess them, and so now they have to and want to interact with me, and then that changes the game.
What you want to do is catch them doing the thing that you want to reinforce, rather than force them to do
100%.
the thing that you
Yeah,
do.
everything through self-discovery.
And I know a lot of people are confused, and that's the distinction between the way Dr. Jessen and I use DITs and the way that some of the other people in the program that I write about in the book use DITs. Dr. Jessen and I used them to create an environment where the person would do the thing that we wanted them to do, like provide information, and then we would use social influence and reinforcement to get them to continue to do it.
Yeah.
The other school of thought was, hurt them until they tell you what you want to know, hurt them some more to see if they change their story, and if they don't change their story, then we'll move on, ask another question, and hurt them again.
Yeah.
And in my view, that thing alone created most of the problems that had to do with the agency.
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly, it's like a math formula that you're plugging in either humans or dogs. I mean, it's the exact same thing. Is that you want a dog to learn everything through self-discovery, like you ignore it. But then the other thing too is, just like you said, is that more archaic compulsion-based system is what causes most of the warrior dogs that come here, because they've been handled and trained that way. Not all of them, and so our big thing is exactly like what you guys worked on, is building a relationship and rapport.
It was an impossible. First off, we didn't do the initial interrogation training. They trained their own interrogators. We didn't do that, and so. By the time we saw those guys in the field early on, they already had a bunch of bad habits that we, in some cases, couldn't change. And because we're green badgers, right?
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many times I've been told, "Who gives a shit what you think?"
Yeah.
Well, the reason they created that interrogation program was they were trying to recreate the successes that Dr. Jessen and I had. And they thought that if we used some words like learned helplessness and we apply coercive pressures, then that's what's important about this.
Yeah.
But what I try to make clear in the book, and what I would love to make clear here, is that it's not the same thing. What matters is the timing of these things and waiting for the person to voluntarily provide something, rather than trying to get them to squirt something out one time.
Yeah. Yep. Well, and to me, I mean, you're the doctor, not me, but I know one of the things that I teach and find myself saying over and over and over is as it relates to kind of the method we use here based on operant conditioning, is your primary goal starting out is to manipulate the environment, build a trust-based rapport with that dog, and then it is your job to make them understand that it's their actions that are going to dictate the consequences, and it has nothing to do with you.
A lot of people get confused about rapport because they think that means make them like you. That's not what it means. It means make them understand you.
Yeah.
Make you predictable to them. There were a lot of these interrogators who thought, who embraced this notion of a learned helplessness paradigm, and thought that the thing that you're supposed to do is make it so unpredictable that the person, capitulated. But
It's the opposite.
it's really the opposite.
Yeah. It seems like the FBI was pretty weak in that regard.
Not the redheaded guy. The redheaded guy was really brilliant.
Yeah.
And I think that he's the one who, we'll talk about whenever you want to, but he was really good. And to be candid, at times when there was something to focus on, Sufan could be good too.
Yeah.
But what set things back with Zubaydah was when he shut down. As he got better and better, more well, he shut down, right? And they thought that they had built up so much rapport with the guy that if they went out and cussed at him and screamed at him, like they called it going Sipperwitz, and that's their term, not my term.
Yeah.
If they went in and went Sipperwitz on him, then he would fear losing his relationship with them so much that he would. And what had started the downcline was they tried to bribe him. They had been told not to pitch him by the agency. And so what they were going to try to do is, how it's always better to ask forgiveness than permission?
Yeah.
Well, they had that attitude.
Yeah.
And so what they wanted to do was, they didn't use the word pitch and they didn't use the word work, but they said things like, America remembers her friends, and there are things that we can do. There are resources that we have. We can get you Pepsi and whatever that, and we can do things for your mother and your daughter. But we're going to remember our friends, and we're going to, blah blah blah. And Zubaydah leans back and puts his hand on his crotch and says, "What makes you think I would betray my God for a Pepsi?" and he starts shutting down. And that's when they decided to go separate. And then and least you think I'm making this up, I was not the only one there that watched this. There were other living human beings who saw this very same thing. Yeah. They go into the room and they start cussing at him, right? And in the heat of the moment, one of them, I'm not allowed to identify which one, calls him a son of a bitch, right? And he shuts down. Just shuts down, and then the same person calls him a motherfucker, right? And in his religion, dogs are disgraceful, so he's saying you're the son of a dog and you fuck your mother, right?
Which I don't know any civilization that
would be hard to take. Hard to
frown on banging.
So he just put his hand on his crotch and said, "You boys might as well go home.
Yeah, you
go home, have babies. Yeah. I'm done talking to you." And he would engage the COB, the CIA COB, but he wouldn't provide any intelligence. He wouldn't do anything other than say good morning, how is it going, that sort of stuff. Yeah. And the agency, meanwhile, the chatter about this next wave of attacks is going through the roof, right? And all the concerns about the access to nuclear stuff is going through the roof. And they had already caught Jose Padilla trying to sneak into the country, allegedly to set off a dirty bomb, which is what he wanted to do. But KSM wanted him to fill an apartment building in Chicago with propane and blow it up during, and he would have done that had we not caught him. And by we, I don't mean me, I mean the entire organization that was focused on that. And so they were very, very concerned about it. And so they pulled us all back, and maybe I'm getting ahead of you, but I'll just finish.
That's where the EITs come in.
Yeah. What happened was, I said in this meeting where it was clear to me that they were going to use physical coercion. Yeah. Absolutely clear to me that they were going to use physical coercion. And some of the things people were suggesting, which I can't go into, were not things.
Shit out of a Hollywood movie.
Yeah, stuff that you wouldn't do. Yeah. Right? And I said, listen, if you guys are going to use physical coercion, if that's what you're going to do, then you should focus on the survival, evasion, resistance, and escape techniques, the same stuff we use in resistance training, because those things have been used for 50 years with very few injuries, and people who will lose their job, including SEALs and other folks and intel people and all kinds of people, pilots, capitulate and provide information when they shouldn't, and they know it's training. Yeah. So if it works in training, it'll work in real life, especially if it's used the way that, those of us who had done some advanced training know how to use it, right? And so they asked me, would you give us a list of these things, And so I just basically talked them through at that particular meeting, and then I went back to my hotel room, and then the next day we were having another meeting about this stuff, and Jose Rodriguez asked me, would you do the interrogations? And I originally thought, he said, will you do this? It was a vague pronoun reference. And I thought originally that he meant, will I go be a resource to identify what resistance strategies the person is using. And I had been, I had 11 years experience doing that kind of stuff. So I thought, yeah, sure, I could do that. And then he made it clear, no, we want you to do the interrogations. Yeah. And I said, well, I can't do that. I'm not the guy for that. And because I was a psychologist, I knew that if I did these interrogations, it's gone. Mm-hmm. I was a bomb guy who got interested in psychology, and my interest is using psychology as a weapon against our enemies. But I knew within my profession, because most of them are pussies, that what would happen is that I would be ostracized. Yeah. And so I was initially hemming and hawing. And then one of Jose Rodriguez, his senior agency guy, said, listen, you've sat with that guy for months. You've seen the threat metrics. You've got the briefings. You know the intel that we're listening to. If you're not willing to pony up, excuse me.
No, take your time.
If you're not willing to pony up, how can we ask somebody else?
Yeah.
And I thought, he's right.
Yeah.
Nobody, there were two people in the world at that particular point who were in a position to help. That's me and Dr. Jessen. And there was only one of us who had seen all the intel, not all the intel, but enough of the intel, had spent time with that guy, who was beginning to understand Al-Qaeda in a way that many people didn't understand it, who had these specialized briefings on what the actual threat was and what they actually wanted to do. And I thought, what actually happened is I thought back to those people jumping off that building.
Yeah. That's something I know you and me both, like it's something I still refer to.
Yeah. And I thought, my moral obligation to save lives, hundreds, maybe thousands, outweighs my moral obligation to protect these guys from some temporary discomfort, especially if we were going to use the same techniques we used against our own people.
Yeah.
And that was the moral calculus that I used. And I thought about it. I'd write about it in there. I thought about it long and hard. I went over the whole thing. What would prepare me to do this? Is this the right thing to do? And I told Jose, I can't do this by myself, but if you get Bruce.
Yeah. the Navy SEER guy, right?
Well, he's an Air Force guy. He was a JPRA guy.
Oh, yeah.
He was the senior JPRA director of psychology who had done all of that.
Yeah. But you'd worked with him like 14
Oh, yeah. I knew him forever.
Yeah.
But he had done all, he professionally, and I occasionally would augment them,
Yeah.
done all of the Mo-Better training that the advanced fighters get.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's great shit. I appreciate you sharing that.
I'm sorry I tear up a little bit because...
No, that's powerful shit, and I'm right there with you. I mean,
for most people, the notion that... For most people, the notion that you're going to ruin your life to save your country is hypothetical. For me, it wasn't.
Yeah. No, and that's I know that it's a decision that everybody in that line of work or in combative operational capacities within the military, there's a huge element of that because it's hard on everybody, whether it's your family life, whether it's your psyche, whether it's...
They told me I left with no clothes except the ones I could buy. They told me I'd be gone for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I didn't get back for months.
Yeah.
I never had a chance to talk to my wife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a huge sacrifice. And to me,
I was gone 279 days in 2002.
Yeah, I know it. I mean, it's consistent with a lot of the soft guys in the military. And to me, what chaps my ass the most about it is people like Feinstein and other, lifelong career politician assholes that don't go through that, that they're not going through any of that. They're as coddled and protected as you can get in this country, and they are the first to motherfuck guys like you that that put themselves through that for the betterment of our society. And if there ever was an example of taking one for the fucking team, that's a textbook example of it.
Well, let me make one comment here, and that is that we are indemnified by the agency, and there are people still within the agency who both appreciate the sacrifice and have our backs. Now, it tends not to be the politically appointed people, right? But I don't feel like the rank and file men and women of the CIA have turned on me and Bruce.
Yeah.
What I feel like has happened is that the Obama administration and some of the key figures that he put in place have, for political purposes, thrown me and Bruce under the bus. They were even working with the International Criminal Court to come up with some way to charge us. It's just
Yeah.
nuts.
Oh, it's beyond fucking nuts. I mean, to me, that's treasonous. It's fucking unbelievable.